Hello?
Hi, this is the Mumford and Sons podcast.
Oh wow. I'm so excited that you called me. Let's have a conversation, shall we?
Let's do it.
Hello and welcome to Mumford and Other Observations, hosted by T.S. Russell, and today joining me instead of Bridget Gamboni is Andrew Russell.
Hi, I'm not Bridget. My name's Andrew, Tim's brother.
Yeah, good to meet you, Andrew. I'm
too.
Tim. I'm also not Bridget.
I've heard so much about you.
Have you now?
Yeah, genes-wise.
That's cool. That's cool. So, Andrew, today we're here to talk about, what are we here to talk about today?
I would say The Winter Winds. It's a great song. It's by Mumford and Sons, which is why we're all here. You guys, us, the fire.
That's a great idea. Let's talk about that song today.
Alrighty, let's dive right in.
Okay, so as you know, if you've been watching our other episodes, we started off by Bridget reading off the lyrics. So today, Andrew is going to read off the lyrics instead, and then we'll do the No Fear Mumford translation. And take it away, Andrew, whenever you're ready.
Alrighty, so this is the Much Fear Mumford translation, which is just normal, straight Mumford.
Right.
If you don't understand it the first time, that's okay. None of us did. I didn't even understand what words they were saying because they're Welsh accent, California accent,
Strong accent.
Strong accent got in the way. So here's my perfectly clear accent. The Winter Winds lyrics. As the winter winds litter London with lonely hearts, the warmth in your eyes swept me into your arms. Was it love or fear of the cold that led us through the night? For every kiss, your beauty trumped my doubt. And my head told my heart, let love grow, but my heart told my head, this time no, this time no. We'll be washed and buried one day, my girl, and the time we were given will be left for the world. The flesh that lived and loved will be eaten by plague, so let the memories be good for those who stay. And my head told my heart, let love grow, but my heart told my head, this time no, this time no. The shame that sent me off from the God that I once loved was the same that sent me into your arms. And pestilence has won when you are lost and I am gone, and no hope will overcome. But if your strife strikes at your sleep, remember spring swaps snow for leaves, you'll be happy and wholesome again when the city clears and sun ascends. And my head told my heart, let love grow, but my heart told my head, this time no, this time no.
This time no.
Nuh-uh.
Nuh-uh. Not this time.
No way, Jose.
Not today, Zerg. So that was a very dramatic reading of it. Thanks for that.
Yeah, sorry.
It's almost as dramatic as when Mumford and Sons sings it.
Oh my gosh, he's passionate.
Very passionate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, you don't need to apologize for the reading. It's just, I wasn't expecting quite so much of a performance. But I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you.
Appreciated it.
Daily conversations, I like to make performances.
Yeah, it's just like life has more spice that way.
Yeah. Don't be real.
Yeah, it's great. Okay. So now we're going to do the No Fear Mumford translations. So now that I have my magic notebook that suddenly appeared in my hand, I'm going to go ahead and explain the lyrics to you all. As soon as I find the page. Okay. So the basic story in this song is it's a man singing to a woman who, these are two people who came together for the wrong reasons. And they eventually realized that there is hope for each of them, even though this relationship wasn't healthy and needs to end. So that's it in a nutshell. So let's just go through it, and I'll read you the plainclothes policeman version of the song. So, it was cold and lonely in the city, and there was something about your eyes that made me want to be with you. When I asked myself if I really cared, or if I was just afraid of the cold, your kisses distracted my attention. I knew in my head that we should be in love, but my heart would not allow it. We're going to die one day. Someone else will have to spend our time if we don't. Our bodies that once were human will decay, so let's make sure we leave a good legacy behind us. A legacy that lasts longer than our frail bodies. I knew in my heart, or I knew in my head that we should be in love, but my heart would not allow it. It wasn't love that made me want to be with you. It wasn't even fear. It was shame of the man I've become, the same shame that caused me to forsake the Lord. If I lose you and I leave, then death has won against hope. But if you're too upset, even to sleep, remember that spring will come and replace the snow with new life. You will be happy and wholesome again when the sun shines and the foul weather has gone. I knew in my head that we should be in love, but my heart would not allow it. There is the No Fear Mumford translation for you.
2 quick things. One is that I just need to compliment the power of Mumford, in that even when reduced in quotation marks, to just prose, right? Straightforward, meaning I'm still gleaning insights from this, right? He's still describing a profound experience, one that synthesizes a lot of experiences from like different facets of different relationships. So it synthesizes, but also explores deep into that. And second compliment would be to you. Like I've heard that song probably 1,000 times. Like I know it word for word. I can sing along to it. I can sing it on my own, right? But I'm still like gleaning things from the prose translation. So you've really managed to capture it in a very clear and lucid way.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And yeah, prose translation, that's a very good way of putting it. I think that's what I've been trying to, that's the word I've been searching for. It's a prose version of Mumford and Sons.
Yeah.
Do you want to go ahead and introduce our literary source for the day?
Yes.
All right.
And that source will be none other than the Song of Songs, written by Solomon or not. We don't know, but it doesn't matter. It's a really good book. You should check it out. So the Song of Songs is a book of the Bible, one of the poetic books, along with Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, etc. It's fairly short, about 8 chapters in length, and it's a duet between 2 lovers, something of an ode to marital love. Biblical scholars interpret it symbolically as describing the love between God and man, Christ and the Church. St. John Paul II deals with the Song of Psalms extensively in his theology of the body, examining how its portrayal of human love illustrates the way that man and woman image God through their bodies and bodily unions. The Song of Songs is about the beauty of love as it was made to be, keeping it in perspective as the ideal sheds light on the song Winter Winds, which is about false love in a fallen world.
Again, as with some of the sources for Mumford, I'm not entirely sure whether he was actively thinking of this as a source when he wrote the song. It wouldn't be the only time that he's referenced the Song of Songs, though. It comes up again later on on the Delta album. But I think some of the themes tie in very closely with the Song of Songs itself.
Right. So although we're not going to see loads of direct quotations like we did with Much Ado About Nothing in the Sigh No More episode, at least exploring the Song of Songs is going to give us a deeper insight into what he means. Even if it's just coincidence that the two happen to line up, that they do gives us deep insight, right? Something solid to look into. Yep.
Couldn't have said it any better myself. I think it's time to dive into the line-by-line analysis of Winter Winds by Mumford and Sons. Let's begin. So the first 4 lines, first stanza, goes like this. As the winter winds litter London with lonely hearts, the warmth in your eyes swept me into your arms. Was it love or fear of the cold that led us through the night? For every kiss, your beauty trumped my doubt. And I apologize for not reading it quite so dramatically as Andrew did earlier. You'll have to excuse me for that. First point I want to make is that it's got some great alliteration at the beginning.
Yes, that was tough.
Huh?
That was tough.
Yeah. The winter winds litter London with lonely hearts. The warmth in your eyes. Swept. Yeah. Swept. So lots of W's and L's at the beginning, or at least close to the beginning of words.
Okay, you took a very easy word to say and made it exponentially harder to say. Swept.
Saying what? Weird.
I will forget it.
So that was the first point. Second point is that in that first line they mention London, which is kind of unusual for Mumford and Sons to reference a definitive place. Usually the setting for their songs is pretty vague.
Right.
And it doesn't usually take place in a definitive locale. Dust Bowl Dance would be an exception to that. Holland Road would be another.
Not with haste mentions Fields of Grain, but that's not really a descriptor.
Is it Fields of Green?
One of the two. Again,
Fairest
this
son I've
thick
ever seen.
accent.
Thick accent.
Thick with 2 C's.
You derailed me. Where are we at? Okay, so I'm not sure entirely why they chose London to be the setting for this song. It could be to go along with the Shakespearean theme that we have going on in this album. Because you already saw Much Ado About Nothing show up in the first song, and then Macbeth will show up in the next song, and King Lear and a couple other songs. So definitely a Shakespeare theme going on here.
Right.
So it could have something to do with that. It could also just be because it fit the alliteration pretty well.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what the reasoning is behind it.
I'm thinking something along the image. Like I've never found it strange that they used the specific location, because the specific location has so much poetry tied to it, right? So much significance. So just as an image here, we want the idea of bleak, not much hope, grayscale, right? And London in wintertime gives me that idea. Although I haven't been, that's what I imagine. So even as someone who has not been to London, right, you don't need to have been to London to get that he's trying to say something about the atmosphere and the bring of London.
Sure. Well, I mean, if you've been in any city in the winter, you kind of know what it's like.
Right.
Chicago gets pretty bleak in the winter, so does New York, lots of the cities that I've been to. And this song takes place in London during plague time, it seems. So that's just like an extra level of bleakness. Plagues tend to be worst in the cities, and they tend to also add on to that bleakness.
Yeah.
So
it's like a song about the Chicago fire, right, taking place during the Chicago fire or right afterwards, would be different. But that would be a definitive tone, right, that you're supposed to glean from that. So just like London during plague time.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. So we also see the reintroduction of the theme of fear in this first stanza. That was a major theme back in the cave when he was talking about the faults and the fears that he left behind and his fears that were growing, that sort of thing. So was it love or fear of the cold that led us through the night? In this song, he's getting more specific about what the fear is. It's specifically a fear of the cold. And I think that it's both a literal fear, right, of the icy winds that are whipping through London, but also a symbolic fear of the winter in his own heart. He's afraid to be alone, right, because then he would have to think about what he's done. He'd have to deal with that darkness that he has inside of him.
Would you say it's a visible darkness?
I would not say that it's a darkness visible.
Okay, so too early?
A little too early for that. That's a few albums down the line.
Okay, I will wait.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, bro. And so because he's afraid of that winter in his own heart, he distracts himself with beauty so that he doesn't have to deal with these doubts that he's having about whatever it is. I think we're going to see a little later in the song what those doubts are that he's having. Yeah, so I think it's pretty clear that he thinks it's not love that led him through the night. I think he's pretty sure that it was the fear of the cold.
Right.
Because every time he thought about it, he just distracted himself.
Yeah, and I can say that I think many other young men have been through a similar process where you fall in love and you're wondering, is this love or something else, right? Something abstract. And whichever way you're leaning, you're asking that question. If there's any uncertainty in your motivation, right? Is this love or lust? Is this love or just necessity, right? Am I doing this because I feel like I have to, right? That I'll be miserable if I don't, right? Desperation.
Do you think that just by asking the question, it shows that it's probably not love?
It shows that it's not what we're going to see in later albums, right? That guiding light. No question there, right? There's so many more answers there. So much more certainty than doubt. Whereas here, right after that, we're getting doubt. And so that's the framework with which we're supposed to analyze this relationship.
Okay, yeah, I'd agree with that. The next lines is the first chorus. And my head told my heart, let love grow, but my heart told my head, this time no. This time, no.
Major red flag.
No.
That's when we know, all right, this is something other than love. Because he's trying his best. He's like, yeah, my brain's bored because it's winter, and I need something to hope on. And no, this is not going to work very well.
Right. So I think this chorus can be a little bit confusing the way that it's worded.
Yes.
Because it kind of reverses the common expressions, right, about the head and the heart. So the way that I see it is that they're sort of reversing the roles of head and heart here. And they're doing so to illustrate a common scenario where a man knows the right thing to do but refuses to do it. So hear me out on this. So we often know that something is wrong intellectually, but we find ourselves doing it anyway because our heart's not in a place where we can resist doing it. Right? Because the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak, right?
Yeah.
And the heart is flesh. You know, despite a lot of talk about the heart as being something sort of ethereal, the heart's actually flesh. The heart is where, like, spirit, soul, and body all, or like mind, soul, and body all meet together. So it definitely shares in that heart, that fleshly component.
So it's like if you were taking a quiz and your mind knew the answer, right? Under normal circumstances, you would have no doubt as to what you put down, right? You know the correct answer, you're going to circle that one. But now let's say, change the scenario, you would get paid $10 if you selected the wrong answer, right? Now you have this other motivation pulling at your heartstrings, and so you might end up choosing a different one, even though, right, intellectually, you know this is the right one.
Right. So I think in this scenario, he knows that he's not supposed to be with this woman, but because of the weakness of his heart, he's with her anyway.
Right.
And so he needs to reconcile his head and his heart together. He needs to align his heart and body and mind.
Yeah.
To face what I've done and do my time. Right.
And there's an alignment.
A design and alignment. Yeah, right, exactly. So we're already, we know that the heart needs to be aligned. And I think we're starting to see in this song that it's not. But then I do think there's another meaning in this refrain. I think it could also mean, and I don't know if these two meanings are irreconcilable or if they could both be correct, but I think it might be a case of the head believing that he should be in love with this girl, but that it's wrong, that the head is wrong, right? Because the heart recognizes that you can't force love to awaken if it chooses not to.
Right.
Which brings us to the Song of Songs, right? It's an expression that's repeated several times throughout that book, is stir not up nor awaken love until it please.
Ooh, that is insightful.
So it's, what I think is going on here is it's a case of his head being like, you're with this girl, you should fall in love with her and be with her. But the heart's being like, yeah, but I can't force that to happen.
Right.
If it's not going to happen.
Yeah, so it's like, for whatever reason, he is compelled intellectually to be in a relationship with this woman, right? Whether that, I feel like it's something along the spectrum of either he sees it as a necessity, right? So like that would involve some raging compulsion of like, maybe we're gonna die soon, which we'll get to later. Therefore, I need love, or like I'm lost without it, right? We get hints of that later. In every album. Somewhere along the spectrum of, right, I need this is a necessity, to might as well. But it's something cold and incalculated like that. So the might as well would be, I'm bored, And so, like David and Bathsheba. That's a bit shallower of interpretation, but also very human, right? Mumford may as well be writing about that. But then the heart's just not into it. So the heart's like, well, I can't, right? You're not the boss of me. You can't move me. Those are two independent creatures that are supposed to move together, but since we're
if they're
human,
not aligned,
then they don't.
then they don't. Right.
Yeah.
So we seem to, like, I could see it being either way, that the heart is the one, that the heart's the one that's correct and the head is incorrect, or that they're both correct and incorrect on different levels.
Yeah, because they're not speaking the same language.
Right, exactly. I think they're talking across purposes.
Right. I mean, Aristotle, he talks about the intellect. It sees, it ascertains universals from the images from the imagination, right? So the objects in the imagination can be words, sounds, sensations of any sort, right? And the intellect universalizes them. And so there's like a chamber of objects in there. Whereas the will is just a motion towards something that it loves, right? And it's actually a passive motion. It's drawn towards things that it loves, which is just categorically different from the intellect. So it's not like the will can speak language except motion towards something else, right? I love, therefore I want, right? There's just a vague sense of oneness as the ideal. So no, these things are not speaking the same language.
Right. Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, and I think what's happening is I've used the phrase winter in his heart before, which incidentally is a song by the Avett Brothers.
Yep.
Called Winter in My Heart, which is a great song. We'll talk more about the Avett Brothers later in this episode, actually.
Yes.
But let love grow, right? Grow that's a springtime word, right? That's associated with new life, right? Vegetation. But because he has winter in his heart, he's not in a place where love is able to grow. I think that's why his heart is saying this time no.
It's saying it's not time right now.
It's not time. Either because she's not the one or because I'm not ready. Right?
Yeah.
Because I'm not pure enough.
And of course it's going to be both, because a relationship goes both ways.
Exactly.
So whatever it is in her, in him, there is, again, no alignment. Right? Because we're supposed to have a healthy relationship with ourselves and a healthy relationship with someone else.
Right.
And I think that's actually reflective in this case. He's not ready to be aligned to someone else because he's not aligned with himself. So how could he give himself entirely to someone else?
Yeah. So you can't hurry love, right? You just have to wait.
Now, is that by the Supremes or Phil Collins?
It's by the Supremes, and Phil Collins covered it.
Okay. He did better.
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah.
But they do get the credit.
You just have to wait. Yep. Okay, we're gonna move on before I start singing more. So next lines. We'll be washed and buried one day, my girl, and the time we were given will be left for the world. The flesh that lived and loved will be eaten by plague, so let the memories be good for those who stay. So this is a classic theme here of Memento Mori, right? Which is remember. It's a Latin phrase. It means remember you will die.
Yeah.
And so the origin for it is it originated in the Roman Empire when a victorious general would return home to Rome and would ride through the streets of the city surrounded by all the cheering crowds. And to keep the fame and glory from going to the general's head, they would have a slave ride alongside him and whispering in his ear the words, Memento Mori, remember you will die. Because the fact of death puts everything into perspective. Right? He recognizes that this doesn't, all this fame and glory, it doesn't immortalize him, doesn't make him a god, right? At the end of the day, he's still flesh and blood and he's going to die.
I would just love, like, dream job is to be that slave. Because I don't want to be the guy that everyone's cheering about. Expectations come along with that, right? I'm the Sigma male who's standing there, right, sitting in the carriage with him. No one cares that I'm there except for the guy that everyone cares about. So who do they really care about? Who's really in charge here?
It's like in The Office, and Michael's like, I entertained the guy who entertained 1,000 guys. So okay, so Andrew wants to be that guy.
Yes.
That's an important lesson that we learned today. Great.
But my heart's saying no.
So this whole theme of, remember death is like it suffuses this whole song here, right? There are lots and lots of death and decay related words that are used throughout the song, right? Plague, pestilence, winter, cold, buried, night, lost, gone, strife, sleep, snow, no, right? Lots of negative death related words.
Yeah.
Death and winter and all that, and it's all related.
So if it must be winter in his heart, then it must be death, plague, disease, decay, and everything else in his heart as well.
Right. Okay. So
Cool.
I think, which this song does not sound super dire,
Right.
which is kind of a weird thing about it. Like, it's a pretty upbeat song, actually. It's really brassy and fast and, exciting song to listen to and to sing.
I'm no expert, but I'm guessing it's in the major key.
Probably.
Just guessing.
Probably.
I've got a 50-50 chance here.
So I think they oftentimes seem to do this with they'll like contrast, cheerful lyrics with depressing music and depressing music with cheerful lyrics.
Yeah.
Or, vice versa.
Right.
All that, yeah.
Virtue versa and vice versa.
Yeah, that, no, not that. Moving on. So basically what's happening in this verse is that he's saying that, look, we're going to die someday. We need to make sure that we leave a good legacy behind us, right? That there's more at stake than just our own relationship to think about, right? We need to let the memories be good for those who stay. We need to make sure that after we're gone, we haven't left the world worse than it was.
Interesting.
And I think, I'm not sure if he's like saying this as an excuse for them to be together or as a reason for them to separate, or maybe he's just acknowledging it and not really sure where it's going to lead him.
So I think he's just exemplifying a good existentialist philosophy, and that is that a good existentialist always leaves existence cleaner than he found it.
Yes.
But it's also Ciceronian, right? It's more Ciceronian than it is Epicurean, in that Epicurus was like, hey, you're all that matters, right? So live life to the fullest. And we get hints of that in the rest of his songs, possibly because he's contemporary, he's modern. But no, this is distinctly Ciceronian in that he's saying there's something beyond you, and that is, right, whether it's the polis, just humanity, or in this case, time. What's the word for people born after you? Children. The word escaped me. No, posterity.
Posterity.
Yeah, so it's like, once you die, he's not a nihilist. Like, once you die, you don't go into, right, your life doesn't mean nothing. It means the memory of it. And that memory, the argument for why it should be good is that's just what lasts, right? If the only thing that exists after you, the only thing that exists of you after you is your legacy, then make it a good one.
That line where he says the flesh that lived and loved, right, will be eaten by plague. That language about the flesh living and loving, it's very similar language to a passage in Awake My Soul, which comes in later on this album. That line is, in these bodies we will live, in these bodies we will die. Where you invest your love, you invest your life. So Mumford is really tying life and love together very closely. That language of investment is also interesting because that's...
what do you invest in? The future.
Right. The time we were given will be left for the world. It seems to me like he's saying almost the same thing in this stanza of Winter Winds and in those two lines of Awake My Soul.
Yeah.
It's
but what is he saying exactly? Because I'm still lost, especially by the Awake My Soul.
Which part?
Living, loving. Well, it seems important to him that the legacy is not one of worldly possessions or even advancement in sciences. It's one of love, right?
The what is it?
Your legacy.
Yeah.
And so your life is your life and your love are the same, right? Happy wife, happy life, but then happy love, happy after death. Yeah, all those ideas are united, so it seems significant that we're not leaving a legacy of like scientific or intellectual advancement. It's instead advancement in love or example.
Right. Well, and I think it might be related to what you said earlier, right? Children. Which is interesting that the band is called Mumford and Sons.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of it's kind of a coincidence that it ended up that way, because they didn't name it that like terribly intentionally. It's named after like an old-timey shop, basically. Right.
And from what I understand, they all hate the name now. Right. Not enough to change it, obviously, but they're like, why do we get popular with this name? Because it's not one that we're like, because they're all very deep thinkers, you know? They're all very artsy, sometimes obnoxiously so. And so they want like a name that means something, and this name doesn't mean much to them. But yeah, it's good to find.
It does, because they do talk a lot in their songs about offspring in a lot of different ways, right? But like I'm thinking of like in the song Babel, where he talks about how my ears hear the call of my unborn sons. And they do seem to talk a lot about what the impact that what they do will have on the next generation. Right. On their sons. So I think that's a lot of what's coming into play in these lines here.
But I wouldn't say that theme recurs again in Ghosts That We Knew or the entirety of the Delta album.
You wouldn't?
No, I don't know.
Yeah, okay. I apologize for bringing somebody onto this podcast. It's just full of crap. That's a lie. So is that a little clearer now?
Yeah, I think so.
Obviously, we could spend all day talking about this, but I think we need to move on.
But there's something with loving during your life, and that's your legacy. Right? That trifecta. But
it also has to do with, I think a lot of it goes back to those 3 commands at the very beginning of Sigh No More. Serve God, love me, and mend. Right?
Yeah. So you have a foundation, you have an action, and then you have a response to that action, or an internal response. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that like explains all of it. And these lines in Awake My Soul, they come right before Awake My Soul, for you were made to meet your maker, right? It's still talking about the maker and about what man was made for. It's more than just leaving a positive legacy for the next generation. It's about serving God, loving me, and mending. It all goes back to that.
Sweet.
Yeah. A couple things before we move on to these from these lines. So every time I talk about Memento Mori, I always think of 2 things. First is the Avett Brothers, because like almost every single one of their songs is themed about Memento Mori. Not all of them, but a lot of their songs, right? Is about, we only have a certain amount of time on this earth before we die, so we need to make the most of it.
Yeah, that was Horace's argument in Carpe Diem as well.
In what?
Carpe Diem, Horace, who's a Latin poet.
Oh, okay. Is that what Dead Poets Society is referencing?
I haven't seen the full movie.
Oh. Okay. Okay. Get out.
Nobody's saying we only have so much time to experience good things. Right. So pluck the day. And
gotcha. Carpe diem. Okay. Yeah. So that's interesting. So I don't know. We might eventually do a podcast called Avett and Other Observations, where we talk about the Avett Brothers more. We'll see.
Sweet.
Let us know in the comments if you're interested in that. But the other thing I always think of with Memento Mori is a series of unfortunate events.
Yes.
Where when they go to the boarding school, the theme of which is Memento Mori, and their mascot is a skeleton horse.
It's just
it's real bad.
Cannot recommend that show and that series enough.
It's great stuff. It's very existential in some ways. But anyway, back to the song, the Mumford and Sons song. So the chorus comes next again. This is the second chorus. It's the same as the first chorus, so I'm not going to read it again. But it comes back to remind us of the struggle around which all the tension is, all the action in this song is revolving.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That tension between the head and the heart. Head saying, let love grow, the heart saying, this time no. Because, like you said, they're not speaking the same language, they're not connecting with each other, and they can't align.
Right.
So this whole, I think in the verses, he's trying to find a way to align his head and his heart. So then the next verse, I don't know if this is a verse or like a bridge or, I don't know all the musical lingo.
I believe it's a bridge.
I'm just going to call it a stanza because at the end
poets.
of the day, it's poetry, and that's what this podcast is about. So he says, the shame that sent me off from the God that I once loved was the same that sent me into your arms. So this is where I think it gets really interesting.
Yes.
Is where I think he's finally gotten to the core of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, we have shame coming back, because we first saw shame in the cave when he was saying, I know the shame in your defeat, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a theme that's coming back again. And we've also heard, we're also seeing the name of God coming back, like it did in Sigh No More. And so I think back at the beginning of this song, the speaker was wondering whether it was love or fear that sent him into the woman's arms. And now he's admitting that it wasn't either of those things, right? That he's admitting that there was more going on than he was willing to admit before. And I think what's happening is that he was ashamed of who he used to be, or he's ashamed of who he is now, compared to who he used to be, right? Because he used to love God, but then he must have fallen into sin, and shame of that sin sent him away from God. Right? He found himself running away because he couldn't deal with it anymore. And that same shame was what sent him into her arms in the first place.
Right.
So he's finally admitting it wasn't just that it wasn't that I loved you. It wasn't just that I didn't want to be alone. It was that I didn't want to be alone because of this winter that's going on in my heart.
Right.
Because of that shame. So he really, he's admitting that he hasn't done a good job of obeying that command to serve God.
Right. So he's saying it's not that he is whole and just in his wholeness, he needed something else inside this bleak winter. It's that, no, he was broken and he wanted her to fix what was broken in him, like to fill the things he wasn't willing to fix in himself.
Right. He had filled that void with things unreal, right?
Right.
Which I think this is going to lead very much into Roll Away Your Stone, which is the very next song, which is where we see him, or we see somebody, might not be the same character per se, but we see a man who is actually confronting the darkness that's in his heart, in his soul, and saying, finally confronting what he's been running from.
Right. Right.
So the next lines are, and pestilence has won when you are lost and I am gone, and no hope will overcome. So he's saying that he's afraid that if he loses her, he's going to lose hope, right? He's holding on to her because he feels like he's going to be lost without her. But we know that it's not because of her per se, it's because of how broken he is.
Right.
That he feels like he needs her. He's not really holding on hope like he was in the cave, right?
Right.
He's at a point of despair. But it actually doesn't last very long, because the very next lines are, but if your strife strikes at your sleep, remember spring swaps snow for leaves. You'll be happy and wholesome again when the city clears and sun ascends.
Yeah, I mean, that's an amazing turnaround, because in one line he's saying, so this might all end, right? And as a tragedy, to get into genres. And then, if I may impose a genre onto a lyric.
It's at your own risk.
And then right after that, saying, but of course there's a resurrection.
Right.
And that's insane.
Well, I think it's only natural because he's been using this image of winter for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Then he's like, oh wait, duh, spring always comes.
And there's a bit of we've also seen a bit of there's something after us, right, beyond us,
Mm-hmm.
and so pestilence has won, right, from our perspective. If it gets us, right, if we're washed and once we're washed and buried, but then also we do have that legacy, right, and that's the spring, right. Either we're going to see the spring or someone else's, and they can think back to us and hopefully fondly. But yeah, spring will come.
Mm-hmm. Spring will come when the city clears and the sun ascends, right? So when the foul weather is gone, so after the storm,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's crazy how much language in these songs on this album ties together.
Right.
There's a lot of very similar language in a lot of these
Even
songs.
though there's so much language,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, like, the first song, Sigh No More, it seems to be just snippets. And you're like, what's that about? I don't know, until you read Shakespeare and listen to the rest of the album, listen to the podcast. You have no idea what's going on. But then all of it ties together, and not in prose, right? That's why he didn't write in prose, right?
Right.
We can glean things from it, but he wrote in poetry. You're supposed to be going back and reevaluating what he said before based on what he says afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the other day I was actually going through, I have a document on my computer of all of the lyrics from each album. And so I was just doing the Sigh No More lyrics. I was doing a search for different words that showed up, like hope or heart or love or death, things like that. And just like seeing which of these words were showing up in each of the different songs.
Yeah.
And found a lot of really interesting connections in there that I'll continue to elaborate on as we go through this album. But what really struck me was the fact that almost I searched like 30 different words or something like that. Almost every single one of those words showed up in After the Storm.
So that's an important one.
So it's the last one.
Yeah.
It ties everything together. Everything is building up to that song.
Yeah.
That's like the song on the album. So After the Storm, Awake My Soul.
Yeah.
Awake My Soul had a lot of words, shared a lot of words with the other songs. But it was just, it's crazy how much things are building up towards After the Storm.
Yeah. And that one also, I feel ties together with the other albums very well too.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with Babel. It's basically just a preface or a preamble to Babel, because it has some of the same images as the song Babel. I will wait, right, on my knees. I look up. He's waiting on his knees.
Mm-hmm.
Not with haste. Run and run as the rains come.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about After the Storm in relation to the Babel album before.
Yeah, I think it really does tie them together. Not seamlessly, because they are two distinct albums.
Yeah.
But
each of these songs are distinct songs.
Right. But no, it really does cross over very well.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I'm sure we'll unpack that even more when we get to the Babel album.
Yeah, well, you might be wondering, what does this have to do with Winter Winds? Not much.
Not a whole lot, except that it's all connected together. So, first of all, in regards to this last stanza here before the final chorus, we've got some more great alliteration going on.
Yep.
If your strife strikes at your sleep, remember spring swaps snow for leaves. There's lots of S's going on there.
Yeah. Which was a very medieval thing to do. They didn't rhyme so much as we do.
That's true.
Yeah, so you read like Sir Gawain the Green Knight in the original. It's just, so English medieval.
Right.
Whatever the Anglo-Saxon.
Because English itself is a hard language to rhyme in.
Correct.
You'll notice Mumford and Sons doesn't actually rhyme all that much.
It's true.
In their songs.
And when they do, it seems
it's
a little
like a half
boring.
rhyme.
Yeah. You're like, was that a rhyme? I have less respect for you if you tried that.
Exactly. And yeah, compared to you look at the Divine Comedy, which was written in Italian, and that rhymes all the way through, but Italian is super easy to rhyme in.
Right.
Because all the words end the same way.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. So I know the medievals, when they would write in Latin, they would rhyme. I don't know why. It's inordinately easy to rhyme in Latin because you just end in the same case,
Right.
and you've got to rhyme. Boom. And you can put the words wherever you want inside.
So it's really easy to rhyme in Latin.
Right. But in English, and this could be wrong. I'm not a medieval professor. I'm not Tolkien.
True that.
Thank you.
It's true.
I'm not. Please don't Google that. No, but they would rhyme in Latin, whereas way back in the Roman period, they would not rhyme in their poetry. They instead had a lot more to do with meter. That stuff is interesting. But and then in their English, they would alliterate. Although Chaucer rhymed the entire way through.
Well, good for Chaucer. Chaucer. Oh man, I don't think Mumford references Chaucer at any point that I'm aware of.
We should pretend that he did.
We should pretend that he did talk about him on one of these podcasts because it'd be super fun.
Oh, yes.
I do have a video where I read the first page of Canterbury Tales in modern English and Middle English.
Dude, Wanda April.
Huh?
Wanda
April. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in that, we'll put the link to that in this video and in the show notes.
Oh yes.
Go check that out. It's Canterbury Tales is a lot of fun. But
you might be wondering, what does this have to do with Winter Winds?
Nothing at all.
All right, focus.
It's all right. We haven't gone on nearly as long as we went in the episode of the cave.
Okay.
So that one's like forever. What are we talking about here?
Editing out this part.
Okay. Okay, this final stanza before the final chorus. The speaker, he reminds the woman that things always seem hopeless during the short, cold days of winter, but that they always improve when the spring arrives. Okay, and so this made me think of the Song of Songs again, where there's a line in there where the man says to his wife, "For behold, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone."
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so there is a period after winter, right? After the rains. And since Song of Songs is set in ancient Israel, there wasn't really snow. So winter was characterized by rain, not by snow. But incidentally, this also links to after the storm, right?
Right.
Because the rain being over and gone in the Song of Songs, reminiscent of that language of it being after the storm.
Yeah. And it's interesting there, because if we take Song of Songs as talking about God and man, the love specifically there, then of course God in his eternal love and us participating in that love will experience the spring, right? There's no death, there's no dying during the winter before the spring. There's no fear of that. And so seeing that mirroring really does make us think that that the Mumford and Sons song is talking about something more than just a single human's love, right? This has an eternal component to it, in that winter will be gone, right? Whether permanently or through the cycle of the years, right? There's some sort of perpetuity here, some sort of faith in a goodness beyond just what you and I are going to experience, right? Or me and my beloved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's getting into that sort of larger perspective. There's more going on.
Yeah, and that there's something eternal here, whether it's a cycle or personal love.
Right. What's interesting about this stanza also is that it introduces a number of life-related words that counteract all of the death and decay words.
Finally.
Although, so we did have some life-related words at the beginning of the song, right? We had warmth, beauty, kiss, those things.
Mm-hmm.
But those were more
Facades.
illusion. Yeah, facade, an illusion of life and health.
Yeah.
They weren't really life-giving. They were distractions from the idea of death. But now we have words that are very much actually about life, right? So spring and leaves, happy, wholesome, clear, sun.
Yeah.
We finally moved out of that that winter. We have more in the perspective than just like winter and death or false love,
Right.
false life.
Right. Now we have, and he kind of preserved that thread in there. Right. There's some reconciling between the two ideas because he preserved the idea of life and love and legacy in the midst of it all. But that was very much like a lifeline that we're holding on to.
Right.
In the midst
Felt
of
very
the
desperate.
winter. Yes.
This is much more hopeful.
Yes.
Like this is more a case of like clearly seeing that hope
Yeah.
that we're holding on to.
Yeah.
And then the refrain, the chorus comes back. I think they repeat it twice at the end of the song, something like
If
that.
I remember correctly, yes.
But one of the questions I have then is that why does the song end with the chorus,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it seems like we've started to achieve an alignment,
Right.
right? You know, he's reached a place of hope, but then the chorus comes back and says, "My head told my heart to let love grow, but my heart told my head this time no." Right?
So-
There's still that struggle going on, or are they just doing it because that's the way that the song works musically, right?
Mm.
That you end with the chorus.
Kind of like, so
Or-
it's either just, so it could be like a reminder, hey, remember where we came from, right? But this is where we're at now. Or it could be, we're going somewhere, but we still have this misalignment. Or you were saying,
Right? Is he not yet ready to let love grow?
Mm-hmm.
Is that misalignment still there?
Mm-hmm. And I do think that there's a bit of that because it doesn't seem like this song has the answer.
That's
Right.
true. He tells her that there's hope, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you'll be happy and wholesome again, but he doesn't actually talk about himself there.
Right.
He's talking about her. He's like, look, you can get through this, you'll be fine. But I think he's going to have to go through something worse.
Yeah. Yeah, he's not through this. So he has hope, and if you know Mumford and Sons, he has hope. Even though,
It's probably their most used word other than the
yeah,
in all their songs.
yeah, probably. And it's like Hopeless Wanderer is such a critical song for them because they're dealing with the hopelessness.
Right.
And While Their Mind is such a radically different album because it doesn't have much hope.
It's true. Oh man, it's a bleak album.
Correct.
Very
That's-
wintry.
Yeah, it's basically winter winds. Listening to Wilder Mind is like going through the winter wind and the darkness visible,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. There's not much hope.
There's a little bit speckled here and there.
Yeah.
So we'll talk more about that in due time.
So here with this final refrain, I think it indicates that. So if spring has come and it's now springtime, that's where he's living. That's his circumstances. His internal disposition is still one of misalignment.
Mm-hmm.
So just reinforcing the idea that it was not him as a whole human being, right, existing in a broken situation. That's why he needs accompaniment. But instead, this is his winter, right? And when spring, through in its cycles, does come, he's now actually misaligned with his circumstance, right? Whereas before, the winter outside, the winter in London, right, rooting it in a location, the winter in London aligned with the winter in his heart. Now, spring, London's in spring. London it's the time of love. It's basically Paris, and his heart is still in winter, and so he still has to go through healing.
Right. And I think we're going to see that in the next song.
Yeah.
Well, now that we've gone through it all line by line, let's. I think it's time to talk about what we've learned today, and put it in perspective with everything else. And I guess we actually really did talk a lot about where this song fits in perspective to the rest of the album, but then with respect to human nature, right? Because that's one of the main reasons that we're going through this album is to try to understand human nature better.
That's why you do poetry.
Exactly. So just to recap real quick, in the first song, Sigh No More, we learned two key things. One, man is a giddy thing,
Mm-hmm.
and that love is meant to lead him to joy, right?
Yeah.
To his telos, to what he was made to be. And then the main thing that we learned in the cave was that suffering can lead to positive change.
Mm-hmm.
And then in this song, we got to see a case study of what happens to a man who decides to run from that suffering and tries to distract himself from confronting his mortality, his brokenness, his darkness.
The first of many that we'll get to see from Mumford.
Yes. It will not be the last example.
We
That's
have
for
plenty
sure.
of control groups.
And so then I think in the next song, then we're going to see a man who decides to stop running and to confront his inner darkness.
Mm-hmm.
So in this song, we might not have seen many examples, or I don't know that there's much in terms of like abstract truths about human nature that were like, synthesized in this song, but I think it's a very powerful example of what happens. It's much more. I think it's much more of a story than some of the other songs like "Sigh No More" or "The Cave."
If you try to make a story out of the cave, it's weird.
It is weird.
It's like a poorly written Grimm fairy tale.
They're out there. We should do a podcast about Grimm's fairy tales.
Yes.
That'd be interesting. But I think in the next song, we're going to find out a lot more details about what that darkness inside of man is. Because we spent this song running from it and like sort of like being haunted by it. And we were sort of teased with what it looks like, and we're going to get to see it more in the next song.
I would definitely say haunted by it, but instead of running, I would say rambling. He's just kind of, I very much get the feeling that he's kind of being blown by the winter winds in this song. He's not standing his ground. I mean, in Roll Away Your Stone, we get so many definitive statements, right? This is what I believe. Like asking questions, like really deep questions, like, how is this, which you propose as the ultimate answer, supposed to answer my problem, right? That's a very stance-taking question.
But yeah, in this song, he's very much just like, I say running because he's avoiding the questions, right? He's distracting himself. But yeah, it's much more, it's more lethargic than active, which is a very wintry thing, right? The colder something gets, the more slowly it moves.
Right. And I noticed that with human beings, we don't like doing things in the winter.
It's true. We sleep a lot. I sleep a lot more in the winter, I've noticed.
Oh yeah,
than in the summer.
You're just not getting that
I'll go to
vitamin
sleep.
D.
Even if I go to sleep at 9 o'clock, I still,
like in the summer, it's impossible to sleep 12 hours.
It's true.
Yeah.
In winter, oh man, if I.
Well, that was embarrassing.
It's time to talk about something other than our sleep habits now.
So, in the Winter Winds, I keep calling it the Winter Winds. Official title is just Winter Winds. But the song.
Try saying Winter Winds.
Winter Winds. Why are you saying it that way?
Saying what way?
All right. No, in Winter Winds, we're getting a lot of afterthought, not much forethought. In other songs, he goes into relationships with expectations, and those are either met or not met, and that's the struggle of the song. In Winter Winds, he's just kind of like, so that thing that we did, right? This relationship that we're in, these things that are just kind of passively happening to us. What do I think about that, right? He's asking, why did I do this? Right. Was it because of love or fear of the cold, for example? And then only after that point does he have something pointing ahead. He's like, so I've been through seasons before, so we're going to get spring, right? If this is winter, we're going to get spring. But again, he hasn't experienced that. It's just, it's a bit of forethought, though, at the end of the song. So it's a bit frustrating in that our hero is being just blown by the wind, and then he's looking back at his actions and thinking, why did I do that? You're like, well, you're the hero. You're supposed to know, right? You're the philosopher. You're the poet. You're supposed to know why you do things. But he doesn't. He has some vague concept of the future and that it will be better. But even now, it doesn't have a clear road there.
Right. So we'll see if he ever gets a clear road.
Yeah.
Who knows?
He does.
Okay. Good to know. Well, Andrew, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this has been a great conversation. Where can people go to learn more about you and your work?
Pretty much nowhere. My email, if you can find it, just hack into that Yield thing and take a look at my emails that I've sent.
All right, cool. Well, that's I'll get right on that. So, no, seriously, it's been a pleasure to have you on.
Absolutely.
This has been a really good conversation.
Reminds me of plenty of car rides that we've had together, where we are. Like, what was that? When Unfinished Business dropped?
Yes.
We were driving back from work.
It was months after it dropped.
That's right.
It was the day I discovered it.
When it dropped for us, subjectively.
Yeah.
Not from a God's eye perspective, right? From our perspective. It dropped that day, and we listened to it the entire car ride back from home until eventually we knew all the lyrics.
It was like
25
minutes.
Yeah. We do listen to other music, but when Mumford and Sons drops, we do not listen to other music.
It's true. It's true. For those of you who aren't familiar with Unfinished Business, check out the link that I'll put in because it's a great song. They didn't write it, but they covered it. The cover is so good. The original song is kind of okay, but their cover is so good.
And it's amazing. We did not think that it was a cover. We thought they had written it because it deals with so many themes that they deal with.
It's very Mumford and Sons in its language.
Yeah, it is.
So it's just like it feels so fitting when they cover it, and they do a great job.
They do.
So okay, well we will close out for the day, and then we'll be back next week with "Roll Away Your Stone," which I'm excited about. It's a great song. They're all great songs.
They're all great.
Who am I kidding?
Do you think we'll be getting back to the idea of resurrection?
I don't think so.
Okay, fair enough.
Not at all.
No.
Not at all. All right, well, hopefully we can have you on again at some point when you're back in town.
Yeah.
And, so until next time, this is T.S. Russell and Andrew Russell reminding you to sigh no more.